Hey there. It is so very good to be back here with you again. I don't know about you, but life just seems to be moving on at a clip that if I could, I would slow it down. If I could, I would make things stand still so I could breathe in the goodness of God in those moments and make them just stay there. And yet, things just keep happening. Our world keeps spinning. Things keep going on. And I hope you are feeling equipped to handle everything that the world is throwing at you these days. It's a difficult world, difficult times, lots of questions, sometimes not a lot of good answers. But I'm telling you, trusting in God is the only way. I don't have anything better to give you than that. We're going to go back to this passage. We've been in Romans 12, verses 1 and 2 for a number of weeks now. And I just got to remind you that there are so many words, so many concepts and definitions and all these things that go on that fill our minds. And the only thing that I'm trying to do here is to make the path a little simpler, a little less complex. It's easy to walk away when things don't make sense, or it feels overwhelming, or the confusion or the voices are coming at us from both sides. I get that. But let me encourage you to hang in there. These two verses in Romans 12 are really a great place to both begin and stay in our pursuit of God and our walking with Jesus. So let's go look at it again. We're actually in verse 2 right now of chapter 12, and it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." I will tell you, I think this is if not the most, it is certainly one of the most doctrinally comprehensive two verses in the Bible. It's like you open it up and it's just being packed all the way, jam-packed, full of truth and concepts and theology that is for our well-being. We can understand it. It's like it's all right here to me in these verses. Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Transform, be transformed. Don't let culture shape the way that you think. Don't let people shape the way that you think. Don't let circumstances shape the way that you think, but go through a transformation. That's what the Apostle Paul calls it. Go through a change. The word transformation, like we looked at last week, is where we get our concept of metamorphosis. It's actually the same root word. Transformation is this before and after process that we go through, this movement of becoming a new person after having spent our whole life as this old person. But it's not just a command or a direction to be transformed, but he gives some specific definition to it. He says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. This idea of renewal, it means to make new. Be transformed by having a new mind. Renewal is to restore to freshness, to restore to vigor and perfection. It's such a wonderful word. It's to make new spiritually, to begin again, to restore something back into existence that had died that had gone away. And if we want to just make it really practical, transformation is about making huge change. So these words say, be changed, be different. Let me give you an absolutely simple truth that is so complex to enact in our lives sometimes. It almost feels like, why do we keep going after this? But I'm telling you, don't give up on this one. Simple truth is this: whatever goes into our minds affects what comes out of our lives. Any parent knows this. This is what basic parenting 101 is all about, is trying to fill the minds of our children and our young people with the right kinds of things so that the right kind of behaviors will pour out of their lives as they grow up. Parents know this, teachers know this, psychologists know this, doctors know this, theologians know this. Maybe we all ought to know this. Paul says the same thing this way in a different letter that he wrote, a letter to the Philippians. Looks like this. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, the Apostle Paul says, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. What amazing, amazing words. And this is one of just one of a handful of Bible passages that honestly changed everything for me. I can still remember when those two verses out of the book of Philippians sunk into my life in a very real way. I can remember the year. It was 1977. Such a long time ago. It's part of a youth ministry trip that I was on, where we let these two verses, as well as the rest of Philippians chapter 4, sink into us as we spent about 10 days studying just one chapter of the Bible. That was a time in my life where the truth of that section in Philippians, as well as the companion section in Romans 12, came alive for me. The reality is, many of us, maybe even most of us, have a lifelong struggle with a lot of different things. We struggle with doubt, for sure. Yet, don't you find it sad or even confusing that we know more about celebrities, we know more about movie stars and sports stars and rock stars, all of that. We know more about them often than we do about God. Or when God seems distant from us, we spend more time on the internet doing searches than we actually do with God himself. Or when we can't stop sinning, what do? Our tendency is to run right away to self-help books and TV talk shows, or finding something that would help us in this mess we find ourselves in because we live in disobedience to God sometimes. Or when we are just overcome with anger, instead of going straight to God, we spend a whole lot of time just blowing up and justifying it by saying, well, that's just the way I am, instead of following the example of Jesus. Or when a fear of the future starts to grip our hearts and anxiety begins to creep in because of the ugliness that's out there in the world. So we spend our time worrying instead of letting his promises pile up inside of our lives by hearing again over and over those things that God says are true. Or when we're confused about what to do. Why is it that our first move always seems to be to go to friends instead of going directly to God to ask him to reveal his wisdom through his words and his character to us? Or maybe worst of all, this struggle, it happens to us where those times in our lives when the hurting just won't stop. And so it controls us. But I guess what I want to say to you is that transformation can come. No, transformation will come as our thinking becomes renewed and renovated. Look, this is no power of positive thinking kind of deal. It is so easy to slip over into that idea that we just start reading some pithy sayings or putting up some posters on the wall that are about thinking better thoughts and all of that kind of stuff. No, it's way more than this. It's about changed thinking. It's about right thinking. It's about a whole new way of thinking. It's the process of transformation. Paul writes in Colossians chapter 3, first 2 verses, "Since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things." Or, and I love how he writes it to the Corinthian church in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, this simple line, and we take every thought captive to make it obedient to Christ. Every thought taken captive. Look, we're going to get to communion in a second, but I want you to think about this. I can look at this glass full of juice, and I can look at it really, really hard and go, I want this to turn into a chocolate milkshake. So I'm gonna try to make it a chocolate milkshake. Watch. Can't do it. Can't do it. It's not going to happen. You know the only way that glass of juice turns into a chocolate milkshake? You empty that out and you pour a chocolate milkshake in. That's how it becomes a chocolate milkshake. It's not mystical. There's not some secret incantation that we can say. We can't wave our hands over it. We can't pray the juice away somehow. No, you put a chocolate milkshake in it. You empty that one out, you put chocolate milkshake in. That's how it becomes a chocolate milkshake. That's how it has a transformation. We don't become changed people simply by believing that Jesus died and rose from the dead. As powerful as that truth is, That's not how the transformation happens. One of the most proactive ways that change happens is when the words of Scripture are hidden inside of our minds, and our minds begin to undergo a renewal, a makeover. It happens when we decide to conform our behavior to the words and the example of Jesus and not to culture. It becomes this decision of the will that begins with a new way of thinking, a new way of looking at things. We are changed and made new as our thinking is changed about who God is. When our thinking is changed about His greatness and His power and His presence, that begins to fill my mind. We begin to be changed when our thinking changes about who we are, about our worth and our value and our purpose and even our sin and how it has separated us from God as darkness is from light. But we begin to see ourselves differently in light of what we know that Jesus has done on the cross for us. And certainly the change happens as we get more and more and more acquainted with who Jesus is, how He acted, what He said, how He treated people, how He loved. And certainly as we get more intimately connected to His death and His resurrection and how He lives in us and how His life and His words are what we are to follow. That all comes from thinking about these things differently, thinking about mercy and about grace and about forgiveness and about love and about peace and all of that truth that is packaged in His word and in His presence as He makes known to us, living inside of us. I've said this before. I think I'll just keep on saying it. We have nowhere else to go. We need to stop whining. We need to stop blaming. We need to stop doubting. We need to stop hurting. We need to stop sinning. We need to stop being miserable. We need to go to the words of life and go to the one who spoke those words and have our thinking changed. Be transformed by the renewing of our minds. That transformation is a promise that God makes. It's a promise that He will keep. No doubt about that. So let's take just a moment and remember again, as we do each week, we share in the bread and the juice, or the body and the blood of Jesus. It represents His power to raise us to life, just as He did when He was raised from the dead, on our behalf and for our good. Every day, renewing of the mind. Go to Him. He'll keep His promises, no doubt. Until next time, see ya.